Hello, everyone. Do you want to change your life one small step at a time? Sometimes we think big changes need big actions. But what if I told you that the tiniest habits can lead to the most significant transformations in your life? That's right. Today, we'll explore the magic of atomic habits, where small actions build up into powerful outcomes over time. Imagine planting a tiny seed. Each daily habit is that seed. With care, consistency, and time, it grows into a strong tree. You see, habits are not just about doing something repeatedly. They are about becoming someone new. Have you ever heard someone say, "I'm just not a morning person," or "I'm terrible at exercising"? That's not who they are. It's just a habit they've practiced over and over again. What if you could change your story? What if you could rewrite your habits and open the door to an entirely new version of yourself? It all starts with one tiny action. Let me share a simple example. Picture a plane flying from Los Angeles to New York. If the pilot adjusts the course just a few degrees south, the plane won't land in New York. It will end up in Washington, D.C. instead. The adjustment is so small, passengers wouldn't even notice. Habits work the same way. Tiny changes guide you in a direction that seems invisible at first, but months or years later, the results are dramatic. It's the same with learning English. Right now, you're here, improving your skills little by little, and over time, these small steps will compound into fluency. But why do habits matter so much? The truth is, our lives are made up of the things we do every day: brushing our teeth, drinking coffee, checking social media, or even procrastinating. These little things shape our reality. If we can get 1% better every day, that tiny improvement will snowball into something incredible. Imagine yourself becoming just a little better every single day. The more you practice, the easier it becomes. This isn't about being perfect. It's about progress. Let's talk about something called identity-based habits. This is one of the strongest ideas in atomic habits. Most people focus on what they want to achieve, like losing weight or learning a language. But instead of asking, "What do I want to do?" ask yourself, "Who do I want to become?" If you want to be fluent in English, think of yourself as an English speaker. Start saying things like, "I'm learning to speak English," instead of, "I'm bad at English." The more you tell yourself who you are, the more your habits will naturally follow. For example, imagine someone trying to quit smoking. Instead of saying, "I'm trying to quit," they say, "I'm not a smoker." That one sentence redefines how they see themselves. This is the power of identity. Your habits change when your identity changes. If you see yourself as a reader, you'll naturally pick up more books. If you think of yourself as active, you'll go for walks or exercise more. Today you can say, "I'm an English learner," and suddenly, practicing English every day feels like the most natural thing to do. Now here's the fun part about human behavior. We're not very good at noticing the impact of habits in the short term. Let me tell you a story. Imagine an ice cube sitting on a table in a freezing room. The temperature is 25 degrees, then 26 degrees, then 27 degrees, but nothing happens. The ice cube stays frozen solid. Then, boom, the temperature hits 32 degrees, and suddenly the ice starts melting. Did all the previous temperatures matter? Of course. They built the foundation for that big, visible change. This teaches us an important lesson. Don't give up on your small habits, even if you don't see results at first. Success is often invisible until it stacks up. What habits are you working on right now? Whether it's learning English, writing, or adopting healthier routines, remember that each small action brings you closer to your goal. Tiny, consistent steps can create massive waves of change in your life. So, let's make today the beginning of something truly amazing. Now, let's talk about why habits sometimes feel hard to build. Have you ever tried starting something new, only to give up a few days later? Maybe you told yourself you'd study English for 30 minutes every day, but by the third day you skipped it. Don't worry, it's not because you're lazy or less disciplined. It's because building habits requires a system, not just motivation. Imagine this. Motivation is like a burst of energy. On the first day of your new habit, you're excited, full of a fresh start. But on the second day, the excitement fades a little. By the third day, life gets busy, and you think, I'll just do it tomorrow. That's where a lot of people stop. But habits aren't about doing it just when you feel like it. They're about consistency, even on the days when you don't feel motivated at all. Here's a secret to building long-lasting habits. Make it easy. Yes, easy. If you want to start learning English, don't set a goal of studying for 2 hours every day. That's too big. Your brain won't want to do it. Instead, start small, really small. Commit to learning just one phrase or practicing for just 2 minutes a day. Even if it feels silly, that's okay. The trick is to simply show up. The easier you make it, the more likely it is to stick. Let me give you an example. Have you ever wanted to exercise more? Instead of saying, I'll run 3 miles every day, say, I'll put on my running shoes and step outside for 2 minutes. That's it. Just 2 minutes. Why? Because once you step outside, you'll probably think, well, I'm already here. I might as well keep going. This concept is called the 2-minute rule. Starting is the hardest part, but when you make it super easy to start, you build momentum. When it comes to learning English, you can apply the same idea. Want to improve your vocabulary? Tell yourself, I'll learn just one new word today. That's not hard, right? But here's the beauty. Over time, one word becomes 2, then 3, and soon, you'll find yourself learning dozens of new words without it even feeling like work. The more you focus, the faster you improve. Another key idea in Atomic Habits is the power of environment. Have you ever noticed that certain places make you act a certain way? For example, a library makes you feel like reading, while a gym makes you want to work out. This is because your environment shapes your behavior more than you realize. If you want to create better habits, set up your environment to support them. For instance, let's say you want to practice speaking English more. How can you set up your environment? Keep an English book or notebook on your desk where you can always see it. Surround yourself with English. Change your phone's language settings. Watch TV shows in English, or put sticky notes with phrases on your walls. These small changes can make a big difference. When your environment reminds you of your goals, your habits become automatic. One time, I heard a funny yet powerful story about a man who wanted to play guitar every day. He realized that when his guitar was hidden in a case under his bed, he never played it. So he took the guitar out and placed it in the middle of his living room, where he couldn't miss it. Suddenly, he started playing every day without effort. Why? Because his environment nudged him in the right direction. If you want to practice English, try this. Make it impossible to ignore your goal. Do you know what else helps? Rewarding yourself. Our brains love rewards. It's like giving your mind a little hug. When you complete a habit, even a small one, tell yourself, "Good job," or give yourself something you enjoy, like a favorite snack or a short break. Rewards create positive feelings, and you'll want to repeat the habit again. It's like training your brain to associate habits with happiness. On the flip side, though, we sometimes sabotage our own success by sticking to bad habits. Maybe you spend too much time on your phone or procrastinate when you know you should be learning. Don't feel bad. This happens to everyone. The trick isn't to punish yourself, but to make bad habits harder to do. For example, if you spend hours scrolling social media, try logging out of your apps or keeping your phone in another room while you work. The harder a bad habit is, the less likely you are to do it. Remember, building habits isn't about making huge leaps. It's about tiny steps, done consistently, every day. Habits shouldn't feel overwhelming. They should feel natural, easy, and even fun. Each day you practice a habit, you're casting a vote for the kind of person you want to become. And when the votes add up, you become that person. Let's dig into something fascinating: the habit loop. Every habit you have, whether it's good or bad, follows a simple loop: cue, craving, response, and reward. Understanding this loop is the key to breaking bad habits and building good ones. It's like unlocking a secret recipe for change. Let's break it down. First, there's the cue. A cue is anything in your environment that triggers you to take action. For example, let's say you hear the notification sound on your phone. This is the cue. Next comes the craving. You start craving something, the need to check your phone to see who messaged you. Then comes the response. You grab your phone and open the message. Finally, there's the reward. After reading the message, you feel good. This reward teaches your brain to repeat the habit the next time you hear that notification sound. Now let's flip this knowledge to work for you. If you want to build a good habit, make the cue obvious. For example, if you want to drink more water, keep a water bottle in a spot you can always see, like your desk or bag. This visual reminder acts as your cue. Then strengthen the craving. Remind yourself of how refreshing it feels to take a sip and how good it is for your body. Next, make the response easy. The easier the action, the more likely you are to do it. Keeping the water bottle within arm's reach reduces friction. Finally, make the reward satisfying. After drinking water, tell yourself, "I'm doing something great for my health," and enjoy the boost of energy. Now, let's apply the habit loop to learning English. For your cue, maybe you hang a list of English words on your wall or set a daily alarm labeled English Study Time. Your craving could be the excited feeling of imagining yourself confidently speaking English with others. Your response might be to listen to a short English podcast or study a grammar point for 5 minutes. And your reward? The satisfaction of knowing you're one step closer to your goal. Doesn't that sound doable? Okay, but what about bad habits? What if you have a habit you want to get rid of, like procrastinating or snacking on too much junk food? It's the same habit loop, but now we do the opposite. Make the cue invisible, reduce the craving, make the response difficult, and make the reward unsatisfying. For example, if you scroll social media too much, make the cue invisible by keeping your phone out of sight or turning off notifications. Then reduce the craving, by reminding yourself of the wasted time you could put toward something meaningful. Make the response difficult by logging out of your apps or setting a screen time limit. Finally, make the reward unsatisfying by reflecting on how you feel after spending 2 hours scrolling. You might realize it wasn't very meaningful. Here's something else that Atomic Habits teaches us: the power of tracking progress. Have you ever checked off tasks on a to-do list? That simple tick of a box feels amazing, doesn't it? It's a small win that makes you feel accomplished. You can apply this to your habits by tracking them daily. For example, draw a habit tracker calendar, and every day you read a page in English, mark an X on the day. Over time, you'll build a chain of X's, and you won't want to break it. This is called the "don't break the chain" method, and it's incredibly motivating. But here's the thing: perfection isn't the goal. Life happens. You'll miss a day eventually, and that's okay. The key is to never miss twice. So if you miss practicing English one day, make sure you absolutely get back on track the next day. Progress is about consistency, not perfection. Missing once doesn't cancel all your hard work. It's just a little bump in the road. Do you know what's even better than tracking your habits? Pairing them together. This is called habit stacking. Let me share how it works. Take a habit you already do every day, like brushing your teeth, and stack a new habit on top of it. For example, you could say, "After I brush my teeth, I'll review one English phrase." The old habit becomes the trigger for the new one. This helps your brain connect the two actions, making it easier to stick to. Habit stacking is also a great way to fit learning into your day without feeling overwhelmed. Let's say every morning you drink coffee or tea. You could stack a habit like this: while drinking my tea, I'll listen to a short English video. It doesn't require extra time, and before you know it, you've made learning English a natural part of your routine. Finally, let's not forget an important truth. Habits thrive on community. Surrounding yourself with people who encourage and inspire you can supercharge your growth. If you see someone consistently improving themselves, you'll feel motivated to do the same. Maybe you have a friend who's also learning English. Send them messages in English to practice together, or join a group where everyone helps each other grow. Positive peer pressure is powerful. Here's a fascinating idea from Atomic Habits. Success is the product of your systems, not your goals. Let that sink in for a moment. People often focus only on goals. I want to lose weight, or I want to become fluent in English. But goals alone won't get you there. Goals are about the destination, but systems are about the path. If you want lasting success, you need a strong system. Let me share a quick story to explain this. Imagine two people competing in a race. Both of them have the same goal: to finish first. But what sets them apart? It's their systems. One of them practices regularly, eats healthy, and rests properly. The other trains only occasionally and stays up late. When race day comes, it's not the goal that determines the winner. It's the system they followed every day leading up to it. Long-term success isn't magic. It's the result of having a system that works. So, what's your system for learning English? It doesn't have to be complicated. You can start with a simple system like this. Every morning, listen to 5 minutes of an English podcast. During lunch, write down 3 new English words you've learned, and at night, speak 1 sentence to yourself in English before going to bed. These tiny actions might seem small, but they add up. The more consistent your system, the faster you'll see results. Here's an important reminder. Your habits should fit you, not the other way around. Everyone is unique, and what works for someone else might not work for you. This is where the concept of habit personalization comes in. For example, let's talk about energy. Some people are full of energy in the morning, while others feel their best in the evening. If you're a night owl, it might feel impossible to wake up early to study English. That's okay. Don't fight against your natural rhythms. Instead, use them. If you're more focused at night, set aside 10 minutes before bed for learning. Your habits are more effective when they align with who you are. Speaking of personalization, have you heard of temptation bundling? It's one of my favorite tricks for habit building. It makes habits more fun. The idea is to pair a habit you need to do with a habit you enjoy doing. Let's say you want to practice English but love watching Netflix. You could say, I'll only watch my favorite series if I watch it in English with subtitles. Now learning becomes enjoyable because it's tied to something you already love. Another key to habits is recognizing the power of time. Atomic Habits talks about how time can either work for you or against you. Picture this. Every day, you either build good habits or reinforce bad ones. Over a week, those choices might not seem like a big deal. But over a year? Over 5 years? A small improvement today could lead to a huge success later, while a bad habit could snowball into bigger problems. Think of it like planting seeds. The habits you plant today will grow into trees tomorrow, and the type of tree depends entirely on what you planted. What kind of future are you planting for yourself right now? Let me share an example from fitness that can also apply to learning. Imagine you're just starting to work out. On day 1, you do a single push-up. That's it. Just one. The next day, you add one more. By the end of the month, you're doing 30 push-ups a day. What started as a small, laughable action becomes a robust routine. With English, it's the same. Start with one word or one sentence a day, and over time, you'll find yourself speaking with ease. Here's another compelling idea from Atomic Habits: the importance of mastering the art of showing up. Do you know what separates successful people from the rest? It's not intelligence or talent, it's their ability to show up consistently. Even when they don't feel like it, they show up. Even on bad days, they do the bare minimum, just to keep the momentum going. Have you ever heard the phrase, "Done is better than perfect"? It applies here. The act of showing up matters more than how well you perform. So, how can you show up for yourself when you're feeling unmotivated? The answer lies in reducing resistance. Let's go back to the example of learning English. If you're too tired to study for 30 minutes, tell yourself, I'll study for just 1 minute. 1 minute might sound insignificant, but it's not. That single minute is proof that you haven't given up. Habits aren't built on perfection. They're built on persistence. Showing up, even in a small way, keeps the door open for growth. Have you ever heard of the plateau of latent potential? It's a powerful concept covered in Atomic Habits. It explains why many people quit before they see results. Imagine trying to melt a block of ice. You raise the temperature from 25 degrees to 26 degrees to 27 degrees, but the ice stays frozen. You keep going, 28 degrees, 29 degrees, but still, nothing happens. You might think, it's useless. But when the temperature hits 32 degrees, suddenly, the ice starts to melt. All that hard work you did before wasn't wasted. It was preparing the ice to change. Habits work the same way. It might feel like nothing is happening at first, but trust the process. Success is building below the surface, and one day you'll see the breakthrough. The secret to staying patient during this process is falling in love with the journey, not the destination. Learning English isn't just about becoming fluent. It's about enjoying the little moments along the way, the excitement of learning a new phrase, the pride of understanding a sentence in a movie, or the joy of connecting with someone in English. When you focus on these small joys, the process becomes more rewarding than the outcome itself. Now let's dive deeper into an idea that truly blows my mind every time: the power of compound growth. Think of it like this. Your habits are like planting seeds in a garden. At first, nothing seems to happen. You water the seeds, but the soil still looks the same. Then one day, a tiny sprout appears. Over time, with consistent care, that sprout grows into a strong and beautiful plant. This is what habits are. They're the seeds of your future. Let's look at how this works with real numbers. Imagine improving yourself by just 1% every day. On day 1, you're at 1 in terms of skill or ability. By day 2, you're at 1.01. That's a tiny increase, something you probably wouldn't even notice. But if you improve by 1% every day for an entire year, you'll be 37 times better than you were at the start. Crazy, right? This is the magic of compounding. It's not about doing things perfectly from the beginning. It's about showing up and getting just a little better, day by day. Now let's shift gears and talk about a technique from Atomic Habits that can transform your progress: habit tracking. Have you ever felt that wonderful satisfaction from crossing something off your to-do list? That simple act of marking your progress feels like a tiny reward, doesn't it? Habit tracking works the same way. You visually map out your progress, and every check mark or X is proof of your success. It builds momentum, and momentum builds consistency. Here's how you can use it. Get a calendar or a simple notebook. Think of one habit you want to focus on. Say, learning English vocabulary. Every day you study a new word, put an X on the calendar. Soon you'll see a chain of X's forming. These X's will motivate you not to break the chain. It's like creating a streak. You'll feel proud every time you see the evidence of your hard work. This system works for almost anything, from exercising to reading, and it's so simple that it makes success feel natural. But remember, life happens. Maybe one day you'll miss a mark on your habit tracker, and that's okay. Missing a day doesn't mean you failed. Atomic Habits emphasizes an important rule: never miss twice. If you skip one day, make a promise to yourself to show up the next day, no matter what. Missing one day is a setback. Missing two creates a new pattern. You have the power to stop the backslide by taking action immediately. Now, let's touch upon another golden rule of habits. Make it attractive. Your brain loves rewards. It's wired to seek out things that make you feel good. So, how can you make habits more attractive? By making them fun, exciting, or even by pairing them with something you already enjoy. This is a concept we've talked about briefly earlier, but let's go deeper into it. One great way to make learning English attractive is to combine it with entertainment. Love watching movies? Pick English movies or shows with subtitles, like music, Sing along to your favorite English songs. Love video games? Try playing games with English dialogues to immerse yourself in the language. When habits feel like play instead of work, you'll naturally want to keep doing them. And let's not forget about the role of rewards. After every successful habit, reward yourself. Yes, even for small wins. You don't have to go wild or spend money. A simple pat on the back, a smile, or a quick, "Yes, I did it," will do wonders. Rewards are like tiny celebrations. They make your brain crave more of that good feeling, which makes repeating the habit easier and more enjoyable. Now let me share an interesting story to help this idea stick. Have you ever heard about Pavlov's dogs? It's a famous psychology experiment. A scientist named Ivan Pavlov rang a bell before giving food to his dogs. Over time, the dogs started salivating just by hearing the bell, even when there was no food. Why? Because the sound of the bell became connected to the reward of food in their minds. We work the same way. By attaching a reward to a habit, we train ourselves to enjoy it and eventually crave it. But let's talk about real life. What if you're struggling to even start your habits? What if resistance feels so strong that you just can't bring yourself to begin? This is where the 2-minute rule comes in. It's one of the simplest and most effective tricks in the entire book. The rule is this: when you're starting a new habit, scale it down so small that it only takes 2 minutes. Want to write an essay? Start by writing just 1 sentence. Want to work out? Start by putting on your workout shoes. Want to practice English? Start by learning 1 new word or saying just 1 phrase. This breaks the resistance barrier and helps you build momentum. Why does this work? Because habits are more about consistency than size. Once you get started, you'll often find yourself doing more than you intended. For example, you might sit down to learn 1 word in English, but since you're already there, you'll end up studying for 10 minutes. But even if you don't do more, that's okay, because what matters most is showing up day after day. This is how habits are formed. And finally, let's talk about your identity. One of the most powerful ideas in Atomic Habits is that habits are not just about what you do, they're about who you become. If you want to stick to a habit, don't just think about the action. Think about the identity you're building. For example, instead of saying, "I'm trying to learn English," say, "I'm becoming an English speaker." Instead of "I'm trying to exercise," say, "I'm becoming a healthy person." When you see habits as part of your identity, they become part of who you are, and that's when they really stick. Remember, every small habit you build is a vote for the kind of person you want to become. Each time you practice speaking English, you cast a vote for being an excellent language learner. Each time you choose to read instead of scrolling social media, you cast a vote for being a curious and educated person. Over time, these votes add up, shaping your identity and your reality. Let's begin with an extraordinary concept called environment design. Did you know that changing your environment can be one of the most powerful ways to shape your habits? Think about this. Your environment often dictates your behavior without you even realizing it. The objects you see, the sounds you hear, and even the people you talk to influence your actions more than your motivation or willpower ever can. Let me give you an example. Imagine you walk into a room and the first thing you see is a plate of cookies on the table. What's your first thought? Maybe I'll have one. That wasn't your plan when you walked into the room, but the environment nudged you in a specific direction. Now flip this around. If instead of cookies, you see a bowl of fruit waiting on the table, you're more likely to pick an apple or a banana. Same person, different choice, just because of the environment. Environment design is about taking control of these invisible nudges. Want to build better habits? Start by designing an environment that makes positive habits easier to follow. Let's say you want to get better at learning English. Instead of keeping your English book hidden in a drawer, put it in a visible place, like on your bedside table or your desk. Want to practice speaking more? Write a sticky note that says, "Practice one English sentence," and stick it on your bathroom mirror. Every time you see it, you'll be reminded to act. Here's another example. If you want to drink more water, place a water bottle right next to your laptop or at the spot where you spend the most time. If it's there in your line of sight, it will naturally draw your attention. These simple tweaks to your surroundings might seem minor, but they have a massive impact over time. Why? Because the easier a habit is, the more likely you are to stick with it. The opposite is true for breaking bad habits. You can redesign your environment to make bad habits harder. For instance, if you find yourself spending too much time on your phone, keep it in another room or place it far out of reach while you're working on something important. When the temptation isn't right in front of you, you'll notice it's much easier to resist. Environment design also applies to people. The people you surround yourself with can either pull you up or drag you down. If you're trying to build good habits, spend time with people who already embody those habits. For example, if you want to improve your English, join a group of English learners or find a language exchange partner. Being in an environment where others are striving for the same thing will motivate you to keep going. Peer pressure can be a powerful force for good. Now let's talk about another essential factor in habit formation. Habits that give you immediate wins. One reason people stick to bad habits, like eating junk food or procrastinating, is that they offer instant rewards. Eating a slice of cake gives you a burst of joy right away. Procrastinating might feel relaxing in the moment. But healthy habits or productive habits, their rewards are often delayed. For example, when you eat a salad or exercise, you won't see results immediately. It takes time. So, how do you stick to good habits when the results feel so far away? By giving yourself a small, instant reward every time you complete the habit. Let's say you just practiced English for 10 minutes. Reward yourself with something simple, like a sip of your favorite drink, a short break, or even just saying, "Great job," out loud. These small rewards will trick your brain into associating the habit with positive emotions, making it more likely that you'll want to repeat it. Here's another trick called temptation bundling. Remember earlier we talked about pairing something you enjoy with something you need to do? Let's go deeper on that. Let's say you need to study but love listening to music. You could say, "I'll only listen to my favorite songs while going through my vocabulary list." Or maybe you love tea, so you could say, "I'll enjoy a cup of tea while reading an English article." Bundling something fun with your habit makes it feel less like a chore. Now let's dig into something we all struggle with: bad days. What should you do when everything feels overwhelming and you just can't bring yourself to follow your habits? The answer lies in having what Atomic Habits calls a gateway goal. A gateway goal is the smallest possible version of your habit that allows you to at least maintain your streak. Here's how it works. Let's say your usual habit involves practicing English for 20 minutes a day. On a bad day, when that feels impossible, shrink it down. Just say, I'll learn one word today, or I'll practice for just 1 minute. Even if it feels too tiny to make a difference, it's not about the size of the action. It's about keeping the habit alive. On good days, you'll naturally do more, but on bad days, the gateway keeps you moving forward. That's how success is built, not by being perfect, but by being consistent. Do you want to know one of the most powerful lessons from Atomic Habits? It's this: your habits compound into your destiny. Imagine two people. One of them takes small, positive actions every day, reading, learning, making better choices. The other takes small, negative actions, skipping exercise, procrastinating, giving into distractions. At first, there's hardly any difference between them. But as time passes, those tiny actions compound. By the end of a year, 5 years, or 10 years, their lives look completely different, all because of the habits they repeated daily. So think about this. What kind of life are your habits leading you toward? Each day is an opportunity to move one step closer to the person you want to become. Focus on just that next step. It doesn't have to be big. Tiny actions done repeatedly create extraordinary results over time. I'll leave you with this thought for now. Habits aren't just actions you take. They're the building blocks of your identity. Who are you becoming through your habits? Every choice is a vote for the person you're growing into. Let's start with a critical truth. Your habits need to be anchored to your identity. Changing your actions once or twice might feel good in the short term, but for lasting change, your identity must shift. Do you know why people often fail at creating new habits? It's because they focus only on what they want to achieve, not on who they want to become. They focus on the goal, not the identity. Think about it like this. If someone tells themselves, I want to lose weight, who are they deep down? They might still see themselves as someone who struggles with diet and exercise. But if they tell themselves, I am a healthy person, their identity shifts. Now, every time they choose a salad over fast food, they're reinforcing their identity as a healthy person. Every choice becomes a vote for that new version of themselves. The same applies to learning English. Instead of saying, I want to learn English, try saying, I am an English speaker. It might sound strange at first. You might feel like, no, I'm not fluent yet. But here's a secret. Identity change happens through actions. The more you act like an English speaker, practicing, reading, speaking, the more you start to believe it. Tiny, repeated actions solidify the identity over time. Each time you say, hello, or how are you, or even, I'm learning, you cast a vote for becoming the confident speaker you envision. Here's a simple exercise you can try. Write down the kind of person you want to become. What would a confident English speaker do? Maybe they greet people in English, listen to English podcasts, or write short journal entries in the language. Then, start embodying those habits, even in tiny ways. Snap your fingers and say, I'm already that person. With each small action, you align with that new identity. Now let's shift gears and talk about the importance of automating your habits. Did you know that almost half of the things we do daily are automatic? Think about brushing your teeth. You don't need to force yourself or give a motivational speech to your toothbrush. You just do it. That's the goal with your habits. You want them to become so automatic that they require very little effort or thought. How do you do this? By implementing habit cues. A cue is something in your environment or routine that triggers the habit. For example, let's say you always make coffee in the morning. Use that as your cue to review one English word. While waiting for the coffee to brew, practice saying the word out loud. Boom! Your morning coffee just became an anchor for English practice. Let's add another layer. Habit stacking. Habit stacking is one of the simplest ways to build new habits into your life. All you do is attach a new habit to an existing habit. Let me give you an example. If you're already brushing your teeth every night before bed, stack this habit on top. After I brush my teeth, I will say one English sentence. Or maybe you take a walk every evening. Stack this habit on top. While walking, I will listen to an English song or podcast. By stacking habits, you nestle the new habit into your life in a way that feels natural and effortless. Here's a fun tip. Make your habits fun and lighthearted. If your habits feel too serious or heavy, your brain will eventually resist them. For instance, let's say you're practicing speaking English, but you're worried about your grammar. Don't stress. Instead, challenge yourself to say as many silly sentences as possible. For example, my cat studies English better than I do, or I saw a flying pizza yesterday. Of course, these sentences aren't realistic, but they make learning playful. And when you laugh, you're more likely to stick with the habit. Okay, now let's talk about failure-proofing your habits. It's great to plan for success, but what about the days when things don't go as planned? What happens when you're busy, tired, or just not feeling it? Here's a concept straight from Atomic Habits that can save the day. Reduce the scope, stick to the schedule. This means that even on bad days, you stick with your habit, but you shrink it down to the smallest possible version. For example, let's say you plan to practice English for 15 minutes, but you're too exhausted. Instead of skipping it completely, reduce the scope. Practice for just 1 minute. Even if you just greet yourself in the mirror with, "Hi, how are you today?" You've still maintained the habit. And do you know what happens when you do this? Your brain learns, even on tough days, I show up. Over time, this builds incredible resilience. Now let's touch on an important question. How long does it take to form a habit? You've probably heard the popular saying, it takes 21 days to form a habit, right? Well, not exactly. Research shows that forming a habit can take anywhere from 18 days to up to 254 days. But here's the truth. The exact number doesn't matter. What matters is your consistency. The more days you show up and repeat the habit, the more natural it becomes. It doesn't mean you have to be perfect, just consistent enough for your brain to think, oh, this is what we do now. And finally, let's talk about celebrating small wins. Most people wait for big milestones to celebrate, like finishing a course or achieving fluency. But the magic of habit formation is in those tiny daily wins that seem insignificant. Did you learn one new English word today? That's a win. Did you try out a phrase you've never spoken before? Another win. Learning English, or anything really, is a marathon, not a sprint. Celebrating the small wins keeps your energy and motivation high for the long journey ahead. So here's a fun idea. Create a mini victory dance. Every time you succeed, do a little cheer, snap your fingers, or just smile and say, "Yes, I did it." It might feel silly, but it sends a powerful message to your brain. I'm doing something great. And the best part? The more you celebrate small wins, the more you'll crave doing the habit again. Have you ever wondered why we sometimes give up on habits even when we know they're good for us? One major reason is that the rewards don't come immediately. Think about it. When you eat a salad instead of junk food, you don't instantly lose weight. When you practice speaking English for a week, you don't wake up fluent. That delay in results can be frustrating, especially in a world where we're used to getting things quickly. Instant messages, instant deliveries, instant entertainment. But here's the truth. Real change takes time. Think about planting a tree. When you plant the seed, you don't sit there the next day, staring at the dirt, expecting a full-grown tree. You water it, give it sunlight, and trust that growth is happening underneath the surface. Habits are just like that tree. You won't always see the results right away, but trust me, every practice, every repetition is strengthening your roots. This delay in rewards is what James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits, calls the plateau of latent potential. Imagine an ice cube sitting in a room where the temperature is slowly rising. It's 25 degrees, then 26 degrees, then 27 degrees, but nothing happens. The ice cube stays frozen. It's easy to think, why am I even bothering? But when the room hits 32 degrees, boom, the ice begins to melt. All that effort you put in earlier wasn't wasted. It was preparing for the breakthrough. So remember, your habits are working, even if you don't see the results immediately. Stay patient and trust the process. Let me share another powerful tip from the book. Focus on systems, not just goals. Most people set goals. I want to lose weight, or I want to learn English fluently. And goals are great. They give you direction. But here's the problem with focusing only on goals. Once you hit them, then what? Imagine climbing all the way up a hill to plant a flag, only to stop climbing afterward. Instead of relying only on goals, you need systems. Systems are what keep you moving forward even after you've achieved a goal. Here's an example. Instead of saying, "My goal is to speak English fluently," focus on the system behind it. What's the system? Maybe it's practicing for 10 minutes a day, speaking one new sentence, or reading an English article after dinner. The actions you take daily, the system, is what ensures success becomes consistent, not temporary. Goals give you an idea of where you're going, but systems help you stay on track for life. Now let's talk about habit shaping. This is a technique where you don't start with the full habit right away. You start small, so small it's almost impossible to say no, and then gradually build it into something bigger. For example, if your ultimate goal is to study English for 30 minutes a day, don't start there immediately. Begin with an action so tiny you can't fail. Reading just one English sentence or writing down one word. It seems easy, right? That's the point. It removes all the resistance. Then, after doing that small action consistently, you move to the next step. Maybe you study English for 5 minutes, then 10 minutes, then 15 minutes. Over time, you'll build up to your full goal without even realizing it. This strategy makes habits feel achievable and smooth, not overwhelming or intimidating. Starting small is starting smart. Let's explore another golden rule. Make your habits easy. Sometimes you don't follow through on a habit, not because you don't want to, but because there's too much resistance. If you make the habit easier to do, you'll remove barriers that block your progress. Here's how you make habits easier. Reduce friction. If you want to exercise, pack your gym bag the night before and leave it by the door. If you want to wake up earlier, lay out your clothes or set your alarm across the room where you need to physically get out of bed to stop it. If you want to practice English, make your tools, like a vocabulary book or app, easily accessible. Put them somewhere you see every day, on your desk, next to your TV remote, or even in your kitchen. When there's no friction, there's no excuse. Another way to make habits feel easier is to lower the starting point. For example, if you want to get into the habit of reading in English but feel overwhelmed by long articles, start with super short stuff, a joke, a tweet, or a motivational quote. The key is to lower the barrier so that it's so simple to say, I can do this. Nothing fancy. Just take the first step. Now let's get into something deep. The importance of rewards. Every habit survives on rewards, but not all rewards are external. Sure, sometimes it's nice to treat yourself, a fancy coffee after a productive week, or an extra episode of your favorite show after studying. But the most powerful rewards come from within, the sense of satisfaction that says, I'm proud of what I just did. Let's tie this to learning English. Imagine you've been practicing every day for a week. Your reward? Feeling more confident when listening to an English video or understanding song lyrics you never could before. These are natural rewards that keep you motivated to keep going. Pay attention to how these small victories feel. They're your fuel for long-term success. Before we wrap this part of our journey, let me leave you with another important mindset shift. Stop aiming for perfection. Aim for progress instead. Many people give up on habits because they slip up once or twice. But slipping up doesn't undo all your hard work. Missing one practice session doesn't mean you're back at square one. What really defines your success is how quickly and effectively you get back on track. If you've ever missed a day of practice, tell yourself this: one missed day doesn't matter as long as I don't miss a second. This mindset, bouncing back quickly, is what separates people who succeed long-term from those who give up. Habits are not about being perfect. They're about being consistent. Let's begin this chunk with a game-changing concept mentioned in the book. Make your habits satisfying. You see, the human brain is wired to repeat behaviors that feel good. For example, when you eat something tasty, your brain creates a little spike of happiness, saying, "Let's do that again." The same applies to habits. If they feel rewarding, you'll come back to them. But here's the catch. Many good habits, like exercising, saving money, or learning English, have rewards that come later, while bad habits, like binge-watching TV or scrolling your phone, offer rewards immediately. The trick to building good habits is to add a little instant satisfaction to them. Let's say your habit is practicing English for 10 minutes every day. You could reward yourself with a piece of chocolate after finishing, or do a happy dance once you're done. Even something simple like saying, "Great job, you're crushing it," can give you that hit of satisfaction. And don't worry, it's not about being silly. It's about training your brain to associate good feelings with good habits. Now let's talk about the power of staying flexible. Life is unpredictable, and sometimes plans don't go the way we want. Maybe you planned to practice English in the evening, but something came up, or you were too tired to sit down for your session. Does this mean you failed? Absolutely not. Atomic Habits teaches us that being flexible is just as important as being consistent. Think of it this way. You're like a train on a track. If one track is blocked, you don't stop the train. You simply find another route. Let's say you couldn't sit down to study grammar like you had planned. Could you listen to an English podcast instead while cooking dinner? Could you practice speaking in the shower? When your plan A doesn't work, shift to plan B, C, or even D. The point is, flexibility keeps you moving forward, no matter what life throws your way. Here's another tip for making habits stick. Use accountability to your advantage. Have you ever told someone you'd meet them for a workout, and even though you didn't feel like going, you showed up because you didn't want to let them down? That's the power of accountability. It works because, as humans, we naturally want to keep our promises to others. When it comes to building habits, find a way to involve someone else. For example, if you're learning English, can you buddy up with a friend who wants to learn too? You could send each other recordings, practice together, or even compare progress weekly. If you don't have someone nearby, joining online communities or forums can also be powerful. Having someone who knows you're working on your habit adds a layer of support and motivation. But if you really want to take accountability to the next level, try something called a habit contract. This is where you write down your habit goal and share it with someone you trust. For example, you might write, "I will practice 10 minutes of English every day for the next 30 days and check in every Sunday with friend's name." The act of writing it down and sharing it makes it more real, and having someone check in with you encourages you to stay on track. Now let's dive into a concept I absolutely love. Reduce decision fatigue. Did you know that your brain gets tired of making decisions all day? What to wear, what to eat, what to do first? It all adds up. By the time you get to the end of the day, your decision-making power is so low that it's easy to fall into old habits, like scrolling endlessly on your phone instead of practicing English. The solution? Decide once and remove the need to make decisions every day. For example, if you want to study English, pick a set time, like mornings or after lunch, and stick to it daily. That way you don't have to think, "When should I study today?" You've already decided. You can also prepare ahead by planning what to study. Maybe one day you focus on pronunciation, the next on vocabulary, and the next on listening practice. Once the decisions are made, the only thing you'll need to do is show up. Speaking of showing up, let's revisit a super important principle from earlier. Make your habits small. Why does this work so well? Because tiny habits make the barrier to entry so low that excuses don't stand a chance. Let's say you don't feel like reading an English article. Instead of saying, "I have to read 3 paragraphs," shrink it down to just 1 sentence. Once you start, it often feels easier to keep going. But even if you don't, you've still succeeded because you honored the habit. I'll share a quick story to highlight this. Imagine 2 people who want to start running. One says, "I'll commit to running for 30 minutes every day," and the other says, "I'll put on my running shoes and step out the door for 2 minutes each day." Guess who's more likely to build a habit? The second person, because they've removed the pressure of needing big results up front. Habits thrive when they feel doable, even on your worst days. Finally, let's talk about the importance of momentum. Have you ever noticed how one good habit can trigger another? For example, maybe you drink a glass of water in the morning, and that inspires you to eat a healthy breakfast. Or you plan a short study session in English, and it motivates you to watch a movie in English later. This is called a keystone habit, and it's a habit that creates a ripple effect of more positive changes in your life. Finding your keystone habit can be a game changer. For some people, it's exercise. It improves their mood, energy, and overall discipline. For others, it's making their bed. It gives them a small sense of accomplishment that sets a positive tone for the day. What could your keystone habit be? Maybe it's something as simple as saying good morning in English every day to yourself or to someone else. That one small action might inspire you to keep using English throughout the day. By building momentum with one small habit, you create a chain reaction that leads to even bigger transformations. Over days, weeks, and months, this momentum builds into real change you'll look back on and feel so proud of. Let's begin by diving into an idea that's both simple and powerful. Success isn't about intensity, it's about consistency. That means you don't need to have perfect high-energy days every single time. What really matters is showing up, day after day, and doing the work, no matter how small. Think of habits like brushing your teeth. Would you rather brush once a month for an hour, or brush for only 2 minutes every day? Of course, it's the small, consistent actions that win every time. Here's a common myth that stops people in their tracks. They believe they need motivation to start a habit. But do you? Not really. What you actually need is a system that makes showing up easier. This is why habits like habit stacking, reducing friction, and shrinking the starting point work so well. They take motivation out of the equation. Think of the last time you didn't feel like doing something, whether it was exercising, cleaning, or practicing English. You might have thought, "Ugh, I'm too tired. I'll do it tomorrow." Want to know a trick? Instead of negotiating with yourself, just say, "I'll start for 2 minutes. That's it." What happens most of the time? You start, and once you're into it, you end up doing more than 2 minutes. That's why consistency beats motivation every time. Let's talk about another brilliant concept: habit triggers. Have you noticed how habits are often tied to events or times of the day? Like, you might automatically check your phone right after waking up, or feel the urge to snack when you're watching TV. These are triggers. Triggers act like switches in your brain that turn habits on. Now, instead of letting bad triggers take over, how about creating good ones? Let's say you want to build the habit of practicing English. Find something that already exists in your daily routine and use it as your trigger. For example, after brushing my teeth in the morning, I'll review one English word. After finishing lunch, I'll watch a 5-minute English video. After getting home from work, I'll write one sentence in my English journal. By tying your habit to something you're already doing, it becomes easier to remember when to do it. Your existing routines act as gentle reminders, helping you stay consistent without extra effort. Here's another idea to think about. Embrace the concept of resetting. Let me explain. Sometimes life gets messy. Maybe you've been on a roll with a habit, practicing English every day for a week. But then, life throws a curveball. A busy day at work, unexpected plans, or even just feeling down. You miss a day, maybe 2. What then? Many people feel frustrated or think, "I've ruined my streak. Forget it." But that's the old way of thinking. Now imagine you're resetting instead of quitting. Think of habits like a GPS system. What happens when you take a wrong turn? Does the GPS scream, "You failed, the destination is canceled"? Of course not. It calmly adjusts the route and helps you get back on track. Your habits are the same. When you mess up, hit reset and keep going. Whether you've missed 1 day or 5, it's never too late to start again. Here's a story for you. Imagine 2 people trying to build a reading habit. Both of them miss a week. The first person thinks, "Well, I've failed, so I'll stop trying." The second person thinks, "That week is behind me. Today I'll just read 1 page to get going again." Who do you think will be further ahead 1 year later? Yep, it's the second person, because they reset instead of giving up. Now let's discuss another golden principle. Don't tackle too many habits at once. Imagine you have a burning desire to create positive change in your life. You write down all your goals: learning English, exercising daily, meditating, cooking, saving money, and more. It feels exciting at first, doesn't it? But what happens a week later? You're overwhelmed, trying to juggle everything at once, and you quit. Atomic Habits teaches us that the key is to focus on one habit at a time. Yes, one. Pick the habit that feels most important to you, the one that will have the biggest impact. Maybe it's learning English because it can open new opportunities in your career or life. Focus there. Once that habit is solid, like a foundation for a house, you can slowly add more habits. Think of habits like spinning plates. You start with 1 plate, carefully spinning it, keeping it balanced. Once it's steady, you add the next plate and the next. But if you try to spin 5 plates at the same time from day 1, crash. Focus on steady, manageable growth. Now let's talk about something insanely helpful. Designing your habit identity. Earlier, we discussed how habits are tied to who we believe we are. Let's take it a step further. Write down a sentence about the kind of person you want to become. For example, I am the type of person who speaks English confidently. I am a learner who never gives up. I am the type of person who uses free time to improve myself. Once you've decided on your identity, every action you take should align with it. For example, if your identity says, "I'm becoming someone who speaks fluent English," then every time you practice a new word or try to speak with someone, you're reinforcing that identity. Over time, your habits and your identity will feel like a perfect match. Before we wrap this section up, let's reflect on what habits are really about. Patience and self-compassion. Building habits isn't a race. It's more like planting a garden. You can't rush the process, and you'll definitely have days when things don't go perfectly. That's okay. Be kind to yourself on the messy days, and celebrate yourself on the good ones. One powerful way to do this is to remind yourself of why you're building your habits. Why are you learning English? Is it to have better job opportunities? To confidently travel the world? To make new friends? Keep your why at the center of your focus. Whenever you feel tired or unmotivated, reconnect with that reason. Let it fuel your efforts. Let's start with this thought. Habits are not just actions. They are the steps you take to rewrite your story. Think about it. Every habit tells a little part of who you are. If you regularly practice speaking English, your story becomes, "I'm a dedicated learner who's building confidence day by day." If you consistently read a page of an English book, your story becomes, "I'm someone who improves little by little." Every action, or every lack of action contributes to the story we're telling ourselves. Here's the exciting part. You don't have to wait to rewrite your story. You don't have to wait until you're fluent in English or until you've mastered the perfect study routine. You can start changing the narrative today by focusing on just one small, better choice. One sentence spoken, one word learned, one effort made. Habits are like writing chapters in a book. Tiny actions, day by day, are building the masterpiece of your future self. Let's break it down. Imagine asking, what would the person I want to become do in this situation? Want to become fluent in English? That person might take 5 minutes to practice. Want to grow healthier? That person might choose water over soda at lunch. Every time you take an action, you're casting a vote for the person you aspire to be. And the more votes you cast, however small, the clearer your new identity becomes. Now let's talk about something practical. Designing habits for success. Did you know that the easier a habit feels, the more likely it is to stick? James Clear explains how reducing the resistance to a habit makes it seamless to fit into your day. Let's explore ways to make good habits automatically easier and bad habits harder. If you want to learn English, what could make it easier? Maybe download an English app and place the shortcut on your phone's home screen where it's easy to see. Perhaps you could prep sticky notes with vocabulary words and put them where you'll pass frequently, on your fridge, mirror, or laptop. These simple tweaks are like removing hurdles on the track. Once everything is set up, it feels natural to start. What about making bad habits harder? Let's say you're tempted to scroll social media when you should practice English. You could turn off notifications or place your phone in another room. Maybe you want to watch fewer videos in your native language. Try logging out of your streaming apps or setting a passcode so it's a bit more hassle to access them. These little adjustments create just enough friction to break temptation. Let's move on to another golden principle. Habits thrive on momentum. You've heard the phrase, an object in motion stays in motion, right? The same is true for your habits. Let's say you've practiced English for 3 days in a row. Amazing! That streak builds momentum, and you'll feel encouraged to keep going. But here's the trick. Instead of aiming for perfection, aim to maintain momentum. If you miss a day, don't beat yourself up. Instead, tell yourself, the streak doesn't define me. What matters is getting back on track. Even doing the tiniest bit of a habit, like saying just one English word out loud, is enough to keep the train moving. Think of momentum like a bicycle. You just need to keep gently pedaling to prevent it from stopping. Next, let's get a little spicy with a powerful tool called temptation bundling. Remember this? It's when you pair something you want to do with something you should do. Let's say you love listening to music or podcasts. You could bundle that with practicing English by only allowing yourself to listen to music when it's in English, or listening to an inspiring English podcast during your walk. Before long, you'll associate enjoyment with learning. Feeling stuck while trying to build motivation? Reward yourself immediately. Most long-term habits have delayed rewards. For example, when you exercise, the big reward, getting stronger or losing weight, doesn't come for weeks or months. The same goes for learning English. You might spend months practicing but not feel fluent right away. That's why James Clear suggests giving yourself small, instant rewards every time you practice. Here's how that might look for English learners. Finish practicing one new phrase in English. Reward yourself with your favorite drink. Read one article in English. Treat yourself to 5 minutes scrolling fun, positive content. By rewarding yourself right away, you bridge the gap between effort now and rewards later. It makes your brain eager to repeat the habit. Now let's discuss another brilliant idea. Stack habits with emotions. What does this mean? Think about how your brain works. It remembers how something makes you feel. When learning English feels like endless work, your brain might resist doing it over time. But when you attach positive emotions to your habits, your brain becomes eager to do them. How can you do this? Make learning feel fun. Find funny English videos, silly tongue twisters, or songs you love. You can even celebrate like a sports fan every time you finish a practice session. Clap for yourself, smile big, or say, "Yes, I crushed it today." These emotional boosts remind your brain, this is something I want to keep doing. Here's another thought to inspire you. The compound effect. Imagine skipping brushing your teeth every night, not just once, but every night for a year. At first, no one would notice. But over time? Well, let's just say you'd be dealing with cavities, and your dentist wouldn't be happy. This is why small habits, both positive and negative, compound over time, creating either success or setbacks. What's exciting is that good habits compound just as powerfully. Let's say you learn one English word every day. That's 7 words a week, 30 words a month, and 365 words a year. Now imagine how much your speaking and understanding would grow if you also practiced speaking one sentence every day, or listened to short English conversations. Each habit compounds into a stronger, more confident version of you. Lastly, let's revisit a key truth to anchor ourselves again. Progress over perfection. Many people feel stuck when they don't see immediate results. But think of progress like driving in a fog. You might not see the entire road ahead, but as long as you keep driving, the road reveals itself little by little. The same applies to habits. You don't need to see the final destination right now. Just take the next small step. Over time, you'll look back and realize how unbelievably far you've come. Let's kick things off with one of the most underrated ideas in Atomic Habits: the power of small wins. People often think that huge, dramatic actions lead to success, but in reality, it's the tiniest, quietest victories, the ones no one sees, that build excellence over time. Let's zoom in on your own journey. Maybe today you learned one new English word. That might feel like a drop in the bucket compared to becoming fluent, but it's so important. Why? Because small wins are proof that progress is happening. Small wins fuel motivation. Think of them like breadcrumbs leading you to your bigger goal. When you recognize and celebrate the little moments, like remembering how to use a new phrase, pronouncing a word correctly, or understanding a snippet of a podcast, they add up. They form a trail of success leading all the way to mastery. You don't climb a mountain with one giant leap. You climb it by taking one small step at a time. And every step counts. Here's a trick to reinforce this idea. Track your wins. Any notebook, app, or habit tracker will work. Each day you complete your language practice, no matter how tiny, write it down or give yourself a check mark. This habit builds a sense of accomplishment. Over time, the visual proof of your growth, a full notebook, a streak of check marks, will give you a huge dose of motivation. You'll have solid evidence of your journey, proof that you're improving every single day. Now let's talk about a game-changing mindset shift. Focus on trajectory, not speed. Sometimes when we start building habits, we get impatient. We think, why am I not fluent in English yet? Or, why hasn't this habit transformed my life already? But here's the truth. It's not about how fast you're moving. It's about whether you're moving in the right direction day after day. Imagine the trajectory of an airplane. If it takes off and adjusts its course by just 1%, it might not seem like a big deal at first. But over hundreds of miles, that tiny adjustment completely changes its destination. The same is true for your habits. Even if you feel like progress is slow, as long as your daily actions are building upward momentum, you're winning. So don't focus on speed. Focus on landing at the destination, and remember that even the tiniest, barely noticeable improvements compound over time. Next, let's talk about the importance of creating rewards that match your efforts. Here's the thing. Your brain loves rewards. They activate your brain's pleasure center and make you crave repetition. But for habits that take time, like learning English, the rewards can feel so far away. So what can you do? You create your own. Let's say you complete a habit today, like studying for 10 minutes or practicing new words. Reward yourself with something immediate, small, and satisfying. A piece of chocolate, reading a fun article, or even just saying out loud, "Wow, I'm awesome for doing that." Small rewards boost your motivation in the moment while keeping your momentum alive long enough to reach the bigger rewards later, like fluency, conversations, and career opportunities. Here's another nugget of wisdom. Optimize your habits for your energy levels. Let's face it, our energy isn't the same all day. There are times when we feel sharp and productive, and other times when we're downright exhausted. That's totally normal. The key is to match your habits to your energy. For example, if you feel most focused in the morning, use that time to tackle harder English tasks, like learning grammar or writing sentences. If your energy dips in the afternoon, switch to less demanding habits, like listening to English music, watching a TV show, or reviewing vocab flashcards. When you align your habits with your energy, everything feels easier, and you're less likely to skip them. Now, let's revisit a golden idea from the book. Make your habits obvious. Have you ever noticed that you tend to do things that are right in front of you? Like grabbing snacks, sitting out on the counter, or checking your phone because it's sitting next to you? That's the power of making something visible. But instead of letting bad habits hijack your attention, you can intentionally put good habits front and center. Let's say you want to speak more English. Write down sentences or phrases and put them somewhere you'll see them constantly. The bathroom mirror, your fridge, or even as your phone's lock screen. Want to improve your listening skills? Make sure your favorite English podcast is the first thing you see when you open Spotify or YouTube. These visual triggers act like nudges, gently reminding and guiding you to stay on track. Here's another gem. Stack habits with existing routines. We've touched on this before with habit stacking, but let's explore it further. Stacking is when you tie a new habit to one you're already doing regularly. For example, after brushing your teeth, you could say one English sentence like, "Good morning, today will be a great day." While making coffee or tea, you could listen to an English podcast for 2 minutes. After you finish work, you could open your language app and review just one word. By combining a new habit with an old routine, you create an effortless flow. Your daily actions automatically include the good habits you're trying to establish. Now let's touch on one of my favorite ideas. Create an environment where success is easy. Your environment works like a magnet, constantly pulling you towards certain behaviors. If you want to stick to your habits, craft an environment that makes them feel automatic. For example, set up your workspace with all the tools you need to learn English: a notebook, pens, your textbook, or laptop. If you want to read more in English, place your book somewhere you can't ignore. Want to use flashcards? Bundle them with items you use daily, like keeping a few cards in your wallet or on your bedside table. An environment designed for success silently encourages good habits without you even noticing. Finally, and most importantly, remember this: habits are a marathon, not a sprint. It's easy to want fast results. You want to speak English now, learn that vocabulary now, or see big changes now. But lasting success isn't about speed. It's about taking small actions every day for the long haul. Every mistake, every skipped day, every misstep, it's all part of the journey. What matters is returning to your habits again and again, like a river that keeps flowing toward its goal. Making habits stick takes patience and self-compassion. Don't rush the process. Allow yourself to stumble, but always promise to get back up. Remind yourself that every single step you take, no matter how small, is making a difference. As we come to the end of this journey, let's revisit one of the most profound lessons from Atomic Habits. You don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. This means success isn't about wishing or waiting for things to happen. It's about the small, deliberate systems you create that guide your everyday life. Goals are great for setting a direction, but systems are what keep you moving, even when motivation fades. So, how strong are your systems today? Do they make your good habits easy and your bad ones harder? Are your surroundings set up to help you succeed? Every system you put in place is like building a bridge over the gap between where you are and where you want to go. And step by step, habit by habit, that bridge leads you to the version of yourself you've always dreamed of becoming. Now there's one more idea I want to leave with you, and it's this: focus on the process, not perfection. Habits are not about being flawless, never missing a day, or avoiding all mistakes. In fact, some of the most successful people in the world didn't get there because they avoided failure. They got there because they learned to recover from it. If you stumble with your habits or miss a practice session, the most important thing to do is to get back on track right away. Remember, it's not about the one time you fall off, it's about the habits you maintain over the long run. Let's think about the ripple effect your habits have. Every good habit you stick to creates tiny ripples of improvement, not just in you, but in the world around you. When you practice speaking English, you're not just improving yourself. You're opening pathways to new opportunities, better communication, and deeper connections with others. When you improve one small part of your life, it creates a momentum that lifts everything else. This is the essence of compound growth. Small actions compounded over time that lead to extraordinary results. But here's a secret about habits that I want you to hold close to your heart. It's not just about the final result. It's about who you become along the way. The joy of learning, the resilience you build, the confidence that grows with every new word spoken, every sentence read, and every mistake corrected. That is the magic of it all. Habits aren't simply tasks to check off a list. They're tools that shape your character. Imagine this. A year from now, after practicing English day by day, you meet someone you've never met before. They're a total stranger. And instead of feeling nervous, you smile, say hello, and start a conversation in English. The words flow, not perfectly, but enough to connect, to understand, to laugh. That moment is the gift of your small, repeated efforts today. That moment is your future self thanking you for being consistent and patient. And finally, let's celebrate you. Yes, you. By showing up here, by listening, learning, and committing to growth, you've already taken the hardest step, deciding to start and sticking with it. You've proven to yourself that change is possible and that you're capable of incredible transformation. Now, as you get ready to end this session, ask yourself one simple question. What's the next small step I can take today? What's one tiny habit you can repeat? Maybe it's practicing just one word in English. Maybe it's revisiting something we talked about. Whatever it is, choose it, commit to it, and take action. It doesn't have to be big, just intentional. Every single micro action adds up to something powerful. This is the beauty of atomic habits. It's not about waiting for someday to change. It's about taking control of today. Right here, right now, you hold the pen. Every action you take is a line in the story of who you're becoming. And let me tell you, you are writing an incredible story.